Yeah. The National Center for Transgender Equality, citing reliable sources, says the Trump administration today will rescind Obama-era guidance requiring schools to allow transgender kids to use the restroom consistent with their gender identity. Will the Trump administration rescind that guidance?
Right now, that's an issue that the Department of Justice and the Department of Education are addressing. I would tell you that, and I think that there'll be further guidance coming from DOJ in particular with respect to not just the executive order, but also the case that's in front of the Supreme Court. The president has maintained for a long time that this is a states' rights issue and not one for the federal government. So while there'll be further guidance coming out on this, I think that all you have to do is look at what the president's view has been for a long time, that this is not something that the federal government should be involved in. This is a states' rights issue. Matt. Two distinct issues here: medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. I think medical marijuana, I've said before that the president understands the pain and suffering that many people go through who are facing especially terminal diseases, and the comfort that some of these drugs, including medical marijuana, can bring to them. And that's one that Congress, through a rider in 2011, looking for a little help, I think put in an appropriations bill saying the Department of Justice wouldn't be funded to go after those folks. There's a big difference between that and recreational marijuana, and I think that when you see something like the opioid addiction crisis blossoming in so many states around this country, the last thing that we should be doing is encouraging people. There is still a federal law that we need to abide by in terms of the medical, when it comes to recreational marijuana and other drugs of that nature. So I think there's a big difference between medical marijuana, which states have the states where it's allowed in accordance with the appropriations rider have set forth a process to administer and regulate that usage versus recreational marijuana. That's a very, very different subject, and I think Shannon, Glenn, this isn't a TV program. We're gonna, Shannon, okay, you don't get to just yell out questions. We're gonna raise our hand like big boys and girls because it's not your job to just yell out questions. Shannon, please go.
Okay. Well, first on the manufacturing summit, was the AFL-CIO invited? And then, I did want to follow up on this medical marijuana question. So is the federal government then going to take some sort of action around this recreational marijuana in some of these states?
Well, I think that's a question for the Department of Justice. I do believe that you'll see greater enforcement of it. Because, again, there's a big difference between the medical use, which Congress has through an appropriations rider in 2014, made very clear what the intent of what their intent was in terms of how the Department of Justice would handle that issue. That's very different than the recreational use, which is something the Department of Justice, I think, will be further looking into.